Radio 1 FM 90.
Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you. Welcome to this edition of Spectrum, this Monday, 18th of March, 2024. My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host. Today we'll continue with our discussion on the alleged expenditure scandal at Parliament, but this time we're looking at the role of the media and access to information for the voters. Now, last Friday, matters concerning the alleged expenditure scandal at Parliament took to the floor of the House, and the debate was short-lived, with some MPs insisting that it was wrong for Parliament to discuss issues that had merely appeared on different media platforms. To cap it all, the Speaker, Anita Among, described as cooked up the information that the Uganda Parliament Exhibition team had put out on social media. She demanded for authenticated evidence to be tabled in the House. She also said in Parliament that the fight is about her stance to have the anti-homosexuality law passed. Now, outside Parliament, she has also given other reasons and suggested that those trying to reclaim the office of the Speaker and her political detractors are behind this campaign. Now, the media, through its investigative role, is considered as a critical tool in fighting corruption and promoting justice. It's also a key tool in achieving access to information that is guaranteed by the Ugandan Constitution. So we'll be asking this evening, is Parliament right to disregard what has been published in the media, which also has a responsibility of agenda setting? Is it possible that the media has got it wrong by publishing cooked-up information like the Speaker has suggested? What could be the lessons for Parliament and the media in regard to fighting corruption? Now, I have two gentlemen in studio to share their views on these issues. Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa, Executive Director at the Africa Freedom of Information Center. Good evening, Mr. Sendugwa. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Good evening, Kenneth. Good evening, dear listeners. Very pleased to be here.
Mr. Godbert Mushabe, Associate Director at the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, also a pundit on governance and development issues. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening to our listeners.
Yeah. Now, in this particular discussion, we are looking at two things: the reaction of Parliament to what has been put out and how the media has actually handled this matter. We very well know that it started from the media, and I'll come to you, Mr. Sendugwa, who is a champion of access to information. We saw this team running the parliamentary exhibition, coming up with numerous documents showing how funds at Parliament were allegedly being abused. First of all, what's your take about this campaign as a media tool to fighting corruption?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kenneth. Indeed, this has been not only surprising but also shocking, because Parliament plays a critical role, or should play a critical role, in promoting good governance, accountability, and transparency, and making sure that those who vote them, the people they represent, get value for money and from every pain that government spends. So, but now, questions being raised on Parliament itself, which is supposed to be an oversight agency, obviously is a matter of concern. And especially so when it comes to, the person of the Speaker, the person of the Clerk of Parliament, and the leaders of Parliament, then it says a lot. Now, regarding the platform where this information has come from, I don't want to agree that, that it was manufactured by social media or those who are posting it there. It would appear that this information came straight from Parliament, looking at, the documents that were being circulated. They may have come from the Speaker or Clerk of Parliament's office, and likely that there were people who, for one reason or the other, were not happy with what was taking place. And out of either public interest or out of their own annoyance, wanted to shed light on what was taking place with public resources inside the leadership of Parliament. Now, the Speaker and indeed members of Parliament, this information having come out, I think it's fair for them not to say that we cannot debate it because it's on social media. If they believe that it is not accurate, it is not correct, there is witch hunt, then it is the duty of them and Parliament as an institution to put the record straight by disclosing for them what they consider to be the right and correct information, so that the audience, the citizens, make their own judgment. In the absence of an alternative information, then what is in the public domain is the correct information. Second, also, looking at the lifestyle of these leaders and what is officially their own known source of income, maybe it may not be far-fetched to suspect that there are some unofficial sources of funds that they get, because all of us, you know, we have our friends, we have our relatives who are politicians, and we know the stress that those who get, let's say, genuine income have from the pressures that they get from constituents. But when you don't see that in some of them, then it is fair that they disclose the sources of that income. Now, the Access to Information Act covers all public bodies, including the executive, which means ministries, departments, and agencies, but also the judiciary and Parliament, to disclose information in their possession, both proactively or upon receiving information requests. And therefore, and I think now there is huge public interest that the information they have should be proactively disclosed to put the record straight.
All right, let's hear from Godbert Mushabe. Well, what's your take on this? Where we have some sort of response from Parliament saying, look, whatever was in the media cannot be discussed in this house, and what was put out there is actually cooked up. The interest of the ordinary people would be to know the truth. The media reports, the public reads, Parliament reacts, probably that's it.
No, first of all, for our listeners, maybe we need just to refresh their minds about where this came from, because the social media warriors have had a series of exhibitions. The first one was the Kampala Portal exhibition. In fact, that one produced a meeting between the Kampala Capital City Authority and the president, and ended up delivering some little money, 6 billion shillings, which probably disappeared because the roads that were still broken are still broken. Then there was an exhibition on health, there was an exhibition on security, and then there was an exhibition on NGOs. So the Parliament one is basically a fourth one. So I don't think that anybody should be agitated that there was an exception on Parliament, because it's the right of every Ugandan, whether individually or collectively, to be able to put a spotlight on any of these agencies or any of these entities, if that is their area of interest. So I think we need to congratulate the teams
The exhibitors.
Our friend Spire and who actually came up with the idea of exhibition. And then some, especially the young people who have been working with him and others to be able to, to run this campaign. So for me, they should be congratulated, no matter the consequences or the effects of what has been done. Secondly, the current exhibition has been focused on Parliament. And I think that for all intents and purposes, everybody knows that the figures, the obscene expenditures, the pillage and plunder that has been demonstrated in those documents it has been verified from different circles, including, I think, it's actually, I think Andrew Mwenda is the one who published an article, I think, about a week ago.
3 of them, actually.
Yeah, because basically saying these figures were extracted by the president's people from Bank of Uganda.
Allegedly.
No, you see, kind of things we should not play over them.
Nobody's playing.
No, it's not playing. Yeah, it's playing. Because you see, if Andrew Mwenda was
he built a scenario.
No, it's not a scenario. He's telling you the figures. He has a newspaper. He has published. If these are allegations or they are allegations or they are misinformation, there are laws to deal with him. So in other words, if Andrew Mwenda is telling lies and the exhibitors are telling lies, you invoke the law and deal with them, because these are published material. So people should stop joking around, allegedly, rumors. That is escapism. Yeah, so as far as I'm concerned, the obscene expenditures and the pillage and plunder that has been disclosed in this exhibition should cause outrage. If anything, what should confuse people is why the outrage would only stop on social media, because in another country which has serious people, Anita Mongo would not be speaker. Even, by the way, even Adolf Mwesige, who is the accounting officer, he should not be a crack to Parliament. These are guys who should have disappeared a long time ago in a serious country. In fact, the mere fact that they are in their positions now and they are doing all kinds of theatrics shows you how unserious we are as a country.
On mere information that has been published online, without any thorough investigation, they should have left office.
Of course, because
these are mere allegations.
Them, you see,
we treat them as allegations.
In a serious country, when people bring information and put it on record, it's on record. It's not rumor mongering. No, this is published information. As I said, besides Twitter, Andrew Mwenda has published in the Independent. So this is published information. So it's no longer rumors.
And
if you are a responsible public officer, you have the right information. You should have organized a press conference and say, no, guys, these guys, what they have published is rumors. It's nothing. This is the right information. But for you to be a Speaker of Parliament and then you are there addressing rallies and screaming about, who is trying to bring you down, this is totally irresponsible.
All right.
And no, let me make last comment. Because you see, there's a tendency to try and close this at these people who are completely helpless and probably hopeless. In our current system of government, the Speaker of Parliament, other than being in a position to grab money and grab this and that, these are people who are really not very useful. They just occupy positions. Ultimately, the buck stops with the president. That you can't have an entire country talking about Ugandan taxpayers being stolen right, left, and center. And you are the Minister of Finance, because constitutionally, the President of Uganda is the Minister for Finance,
who is also represented on a parliamentary commission.
You are the one who collects money. You are the one who taxes people, even with the authority of Parliament. and Ugandans are crying and say, these people are stealing our money. You are there quiet, then having probably dinner and wine with the speaker and taking photos. Man, Ugandans, I think we are just unserious
but
people.
you'll be the first person to actually stand up and say the executive is interfering with Parliament. Because we have had this argument that Parliament is self-accounting. They have the right to determine their emoluments. They budget. And in fact, in Parliament, their budget is just laid on the table, never discussed, and appropriated.
So Kenneth, are you saying
these are monies that they have appropriated?
Are you saying in a situation where the parliament leadership is pillaging and plundering public resources, you are saying that the executive has no authority to intervene?
They are actually saying they are not pillaging. They are actually taking what they are entitled to.
What they entitled? No,
Yes,
because
that's what
clear.
the Administrative or Parliamentary Act
And you are saying that the
allows them
president,
to do.
The president agrees with that.
Actually, we are told the president looks at their budget. Yes, he glances at it.
Are you saying he's accepting that they are taking what belongs to them?
He probably knows what is in their budget already.
No, but does he agree? Because you see, the Ugandans are outraged by what has happened. Ugandans vote you as a president. Are you sure that you as a president, because you agree with the speaker, you have no accountability to the citizens to say, guys, this is what's going on?
Well, I'm not the president. Let's hear
No,
from
but
you.
that's
Mr.
what you're
Senduga.
suggesting.
You wanted to jump in, Mr. Senduga.
Yes, I wanted to, speak on the issue of Andrew Mwenda's articles. He has cited sources from the Bank of Uganda and also from State House. And none of these have come out to say that, to dispute
that this is not accurate.
That this is not accurate. And he has also indicated that he had known this for several months.
Actually, he said a whole year.
A whole year. And he wondered why the president had not taken action, to protect the public interest. So the question is why that is not happening. Is he not caring about taxpayers' money? Is he not, concerned about the impact that is having on the economy? Actually, last year, my organization did write to Parliament and addressed also the Minister of Health, the Prime Minister, and Minister of Finance about a critical issue of health centers and hospitals having run for more than 5 months without medicines. The reason was not clear because appropriation had been done. So when we hear that, this level of theft and plunder is taking place at the level of Parliament, then now we get the understanding or to know why medicine cannot be in health centers for this long. And when you check the NRA manifesto, President's manifesto, particularly on health, of the 6 commitments in that manifesto, 3 touch on that issue of making sure that people get access to quality and quality health services. So the fact that Parliament, the executive, and everyone can keep quiet when the whole country is going without medicine for 5 months, and also keep quiet when information comes out that this level of theft is taking place, should be of concern. And what it reveals, though, is that it appears what was in the minds of the framers of the Constitution is not what is taking place. Because in the deciding that Parliament should determine its
should be self-accounting.
Self-accounting. It was presumed by the framers of the Constitution that they would be people of integrity, people who would act in good faith, and would not want, the work of Parliament be frustrated or constrained by the executive.
By denying them money.
But now what we see clearly calls for a review, because that's not what is happening.
All right. Mr. Godbert Mushabe, we actually told you that sometime back in 2009, the UK had almost the same problem. And what they decided was that they should have an authority that actually determines what an MP should earn, how Parliament should be run financially. And Mr. Sendugaya seems to suggest that probably it's time to review the powers that Parliament has in that regard. Could that be the best way forward? How do we deal with this situation to ensure accountability from
before
Parliament?
he comes in on that point, maybe he can comment on it. But before this commission was put in place, the parliamentarians in UK who had been exposed, actually a number of them resigned, a number of them were made to refund, and a number of them were criminally prosecuted. We are not seeing it here. So I think as Godber responds to that, and that information also actually came through an information request, which was initially denied and then leaked.
Why do you think that's? What do you think what happened in the UK is very difficult here in Uganda?
I'm not saying that it is impossible, but it's difficult because
it is impossible.
It's difficult because of what appears to be, corrosion of interests. But it's not impossible, but it is something that should happen. And second, also, in the president's manifesto, he told, I don't know whether us or them, that he was going to secure our future. But looking at what is happening, and by the way, this is not the first thing that is happening in this term. It started with the land. We had Naguru issues. After that, there were also iron sheets. After that, there was this one. So it appears it is a chain. Then there was also this thing of NSSF and 6 billion shillings.
And we have also heard about apparently MPs receiving money, 50 million, etc.
So we need to understand this thing of securing your future. Is it for certain group of people, or it's for all of us?
Good, but should we revisit that particular provision where Parliament is self-accounting and have an entity to determine what they should earn?
Ugandans have a tendency many times to run to the law. And these documents, I can hear my brother Gilbert talking about NRM manifesto. First of all, like I've said time and again, for me, NRM is a corruption enterprise. You go there because you want to eat something. You know that you can grab something.
Well, political parties are about acquiring power and retaining it.
Yeah, but here you are talking about stealing from the public coffers.
All right.
You are talking
the difference is the power
you are
and the
from
resources.
Public coffers. You are grabbing whatever you have. You grab money, you grab land, you grab public offices.
But not everyone who is in NRM might be actually doing
but you
that.
see, at an aggregate level, you can have a few exceptions. But I think at an aggregate, if you look at the fact, even the fact that even the president, who is the chairman of NRM, can look at all these things happening, and he can't take action. Then you have a speaker who is a chairman NRM of something. This one is chairman of NRM of something. So they are like in a cohort. So when you look at the aggregate level, you are talking of an organization that actually believes in pillage and plunder. So that you have to look at it from that perspective. So secondly, it doesn't matter what these guys write in their documents, whether it's a manifesto. We are in a country that is completely degenerating into lawlessness and impunity. Lawlessness means that you don't treat people equally. Nobody has respect for the law. In other words, you can ignore the law. You basically have a jungle. Impunity means that you can do things knowing that there are no consequences for your wrongful actions. So the reason Speaker Among can go to Parliament and basically dismiss anybody who wants to talk about this peerage and plunder that she has been superintending over, is she knows there are no consequences to her, whether from Parliament or from the executive, which is supposed to be overseeing the work of Parliament, because the reason there are these three agencies, arms of the state, it is that they are supposed to check each other. That's why we talk about checks and balances. So what you see in the Parliament, because there is impunity, there is lawlessness, there is no amount of reform of laws and of these documents or some good language written in someone's manifesto that can change our situation. Right now, you can only expect that the situation is going to get worse before it gets better, because none of the people who are responsible, who are given constitutional authority, constitutional mandate, are raising up to the occasion. The president is almost hiding, busy doing his own things. I think one of the video clips that has been going viral over the last couple of days is where he's saying that he doesn't care if people are stealing government money. That's government money. But if you touch his cows, you are going to be in trouble. Yeah, that's and that's him speaking, and you can see the mindset that there is nobody accountable. There is nobody looking out for you. It sends the
wrong signal.
Yeah. It's not the signal. You see, that is more. For me, it's like you are reducing it to signal.
As a leader, you are supposed to lead by example.
If you have a president who can openly say, this is government money, therefore this one, people they are stealing, but they are using the money to build houses here, and maybe they should build factories, so it is okay. But if you touch my money, my cows, all right, I will deal with you.
Well, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Please join us in this discussion by sharing with us your views on WhatsApp 0703-090-090. Tell us what's your comment, what's your question, and the panelists in studio will respond to you. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. We go for a break. When we return, we will look at the way forward, best way forward. What lessons can we take from this kind of both for the media and Parliament? But then we'll be also asking a question: where does this put the social contract? You heard it there, Mr. Goldbert Mushabe talking about what is called government. Does this money belong to government? Who is government? And how can Ugandans assert themselves in terms of the doctrine of the social contract? Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. We continue after this break.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for listening to us. This is Spectrum coming to you live from Radio 1 FM 90. We're broadcasting live from the central building, the home of this radio station. But we're also live on our website, which is www.radio1fm90.com. You click on the icon with the word Listen Live. We are coming to you live on DSTV audio channel 897, and on StarTimes our audio channel is 97. We are also live on the different radio listening apps. Well, gentlemen, we have seen this issue dominating the media spaces, and some people are saying actually there are lessons. And before we actually went for the break, we had started looking at some of them, whether like Mr. Sendugwa suggested, we should think of clipping the powers of Parliament in terms of being self-accounting. But what else can we learn from this kind of situation, Mr. Senduga?
Yeah, you see, in Uganda it is difficult to learn. Learning means you start doing certain things that you have not been doing. You stop certain things or wrong things you have been doing, or continue the good ones, which but unfortunately what we see is that this is not the beginning or the first time this is happening. What maybe is different now is the scale. But since this term of Parliament started, very senior officials, ministers, members of Parliament have been adversely affected. Mentioned in various things. If it is not land, it is that deal, it is the other deal, it is bribes, from this personal agents or the other. So the frustration then is, are we learning? To learn, I think there has to be either an incentive or a sanction. Now, the sanctions would be expected from enforcement of by law enforcement agencies to hold people accountable. But we don't see that happening. Even the guy who went to Parliament and said, I paid 100 million shillings. The next day, the IGG was saying, no, let the man enjoy his 100 million. So the sanctions are not working. The incentives for doing the right things are not there. On the other hand, there seems to be, every incentive for doing the wrong thing. What then that means is that you're creating a situation where wrongdoers become the dominant in society, become the dominant force at the table of decision making, and ultimately you have, the collapse of the country. That said, I think we can learn, and especially those responsible, influential people, can learn. I mean, the rest of us, sometimes it is useless for us to learn because we know all this. But those who can, those who are entrusted with power, with resources, with authority, with the law, with enforcement, if they can learn, I think a lot can change. And one of those things, in my view, is I want to agree with Godba that citizens, we see a lot in our leaders. And therefore, the image of a leader is very, very important. If a person of the speaker or the prime minister, the other time was mentioned also in Mabat and all these things, is tainted, we should, as learning, have a culture of holding them accountable, that the next day they should not be in office. Because we hear, for example, that certain institutions cannot meet because for fear that, a case of Mabate might be discussed or a case of this might be discussed. Someone using their office to foster important business of government. So I think that should be the starting point to hold people accountable by making sure that there is a very high price to pay when something goes wrong. Number two, for citizens, I think also ordinary people, we have something to learn because we have trusted too much our leaders and expect them to do all these things for us. But that has not happened. It is time for us to organize and mobilize so that, we push and we push so that, we can
push
get
how?
What we expect.
How do you push?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. I mean,
there's been a debate. I've even seen polls on social media where they're saying, should they leave office now? Should the voters decide in 2024? What kind of pushing would you want to see, Mr. Senduba?
Yeah, we can do boycotts. I know it is difficult to, for example, protest peacefully because that is not possible in Uganda now.
There was actually one young man who attempted to carry out a protest in front of Parliament. He's called Martin Suna. He was arrested and charged.
Yes.
Actually, I think he's being brought back to court tomorrow.
So it is difficult, unfortunately, and yet that would be one of the constitutional ways that government needs to hear from the people when, from their perception, the government is not meeting the expectation. But I think people can agree to stay home for 1 day or 2 days to send that message.
Without coming to work?
Yes, because now, when like the taxes we pay, it's a lot and it's very painful.
Mm.
Now, by 22nd, UNRWA is calling you.
You'll still
UNRWA
pay,
is calling you. Know.
you will still pay those taxes because
Yes,
most
you
of
still
them
pay.
most of them are actually indirect taxes.
Yes.
You
we
buy
will
that
pay-
shirt, you
so
pay
it's
the
very
tax.
painful, saying painful paying that tax, but then you see it being squandered and there's no accountability.
All right, Godba, your view, the best way forward, lessons that we can take from.
No, I don't know about the lessons.
Yeah, we can take lessons.
No, okay, first of
Can't
all,
we?
let's understand.
Mm.
Let's get our our listeners to understand the nature and the depth of the problem, because it's a problem of a crisis of significant proportions.
Mm.
As I said, you have a group of people who are ruling the country called NRM, basically, whose DNA is corruption.
No, this NRM
Yeah.
put in place institutions, the Inspectorate of Government. They put in place the police CID, the
Doesn't- it
DPP,
doesn't matter.
the
Yeah.
courts are working,
It
and we have
doesn't-
also seen people have
It
been
doesn't matter.
prosecuted.
You can
People have
put-
been
you can
prosecuted
put- you can
for
put in
being
put-
corrupt.
You can put in place a police force.
It can't be the DNA, maybe
It's-
some
it's
elements
a
within the
DNA.
NRM.
That, by the way, for me, looking at what has been happening, if you look at this plunder in Parliament, you look at Mabati, you look at Ruboa, you look at that Ruboa hospital, where we have sunk 500 billion, and you can't.
And what I'm saying, there's never been a meeting where NRM
wait
has
a
sat down
moment,
and told those people,
wait a moment.
go and
so
steal.
You go to NSSF, you go to every other, you can easily change that resistance in NRM to robbery. That is the nature of the institution. And you have to understand that as long as this organization is in charge of the country, I'm convinced that you cannot make movement.
Well, Godba,
Yeah.
some people,
Number two.
like you said, like you told people of Parliament,
Yeah.
there are laws in place. We have never seen you taking the NRM to court
No,
for
Kenneth,
what you are calling the
joke.
plunder.
Man, you are a joke.
I'm not a joke.
No, you're a joke, because you see, I remember every time people tell me go to court, I remember Nelson Mandela in his book, The Long Walk to Freedom, where he's describing himself appearing in court, and he said he was a black man appearing in a white man's court. You are a Ugandan who is aggrieved, and you're crying because you are being robbed right, left, and center. You are going to courts that have been put together by NRM. For 38 years, when you are a president, and this is not about Museveni, or it can be another president, you or me or anybody. 38 years, it means that you have appointed every judge and magistrate and maybe even judicial officer in that court.
Well, Godba,
So-
what I'm simply
so-
saying, if somebody says something about you,
Yeah.
you would want to see the facts on the table.
So you are saying that the Mabati theft is not fact.
I do not know if
You are saying that the money that has been sunk in Ruboa is not fact.
what I know, there are individuals
What is
who
individual?
have been caught up
Eh?
in these situations.
You see,
Like who?
Kenneth,
Like
you-
I
you
have not
talked
seen,
about,
I've not seen a situation where the NRM actually tells you to go and steal that money and bring it to
Yes,
to the
You want
party.
Kenneth,
them to
you
sit
talked
in a
about the
second
social contract.
and say, go and steal. Is that what you want?
That's when it becomes officially their policy. Not
Okay.
So,
But
Kenneth, you talked about the social contract,
so. Mm.
and
Let's allow God to
check
conclude, then I come back. to
NRM
you.
constitution, the manifesto.
Mm.
Corruption is mentioned 19 times. 19 times.
Mhm.
Transparency.
That is their policy.
And
Yes.
Uh-huh.
That's a social contract between the people and the president.
Which
and
means they are
NRM.
against corruption. Not
So the NRM should be accounting the people, the extent to which something they recognize in the manifesto 19 times.
Mm.
That tells you that in the president's mind,
They
it
know
was
the
clear
problem.
that if corruption is not addressed, this manifesto is not going to be achieved, implemented. Because there is almost nothing else that is mentioned 19 times.
There you have it. There you have it, Gilbert.
You're focusing on NRM manifesto.
Well,
What about it?
No, he talked about the social
Because
contract.
that is the blood of NRM.
The social contract between the government of the citizens of Uganda and the government of Uganda is written in the constitution. That is supposed to be the social contract. That's what was negotiated and adopted in 1995. If you are looking of the robbery of NRM, is because it has presided over the plagiarization of that constitution for the last almost 25 years. I'm right now completing a piece of work looking at how this constitution has been mutilated under this superintended by NRM.
You are representatives in Parliament.
Yeah,
voted for these changes.
Yeah, sure, no problem. And that's what
proposals were brought by the NRM.
Me as a citizen,
and your people approved
as
them.
a citizen of Uganda, I'm sharing with you and our listeners my views. Secondly, you need to understand that the corruption right now that we're talking about is systemic. When something is described as systemic, it means that it is a system.
It
It's
has
not an
eaten
individual.
everything.
Yeah, it's not an individual. The entire the system, which is an organization of different pieces that run a particular society. It is that system that is corrupt itself. So that's why you see that in Parliament they are stealing. In the State House they steal. They take all these classified money. Nobody asks a question. You will go to the different government agencies because the Mabati, that Mabati was bought by OPM. They are stealing. You will go to another entity. They are stealing. So in other words, you are dealing with a systemic problem. For you to change it, if you are asking about the lesson, you have to overhaul the system. And I can tell Ugandans, because you see,
a transplant.
I can tell Ugandans, I think we're in this for a long haul. I want to argue, and I can bet on it, as long as NRM is in power here, because NRM is a product of corruption, it is a product of election rigging, it's a product of violence, that's the government that you have, that is not going to change as long as they are in power. Ugandans need to be prepared for it. Either you have to organize to remove NRM from power or accept to live with corruption. The only alternative is if President Museveni, who is now the Alpha and Omega, because these other institutions, they cannot work if he decided that they work. You could find that President Museveni could have a soul moment. That journey to Damascus. He could wake up one day and say, I need this country to have order, to be organized. I need the theft to stop, because I think he still has the gravitas and the control and the goodwill to change this situation.
Well, the other day he told you on corruption, stay tuned.
No.
Stay tuned. He's going to deal with it.
Finally, let me tell you this. So we've talked about NRM, which is more of this is a robbery movement for sure.
What about the opposition?
Now look at this one. Now there is the one of Kinerugaba, PLU, which you can complete it as plunder. Yeah, because I have argued time and again. If you have a serving army officer surrounded by all these strange people, because many of them are strange, and they are using state resources to go and campaign illegally and violate the constitution. The MPs who swear to respect and protect the constitution, and they are here running around someone breaking the law. I mean, what other corruption want? Because the corruption is not about the stealing of the money.
Have you been listening to the message being given out by Muhoozi Kainerugaba in these public meetings he has been addressing? First of all, he told us his organization is not non-partisan, it's not political. Secondly, he's spreading a gospel, fighting against corruption, asking Ugandans to love their country, patriotism. And he actually said that in 2026, people should vote leaders who are not corrupt and those who are ready to work with President Museveni.
Can you use corruption to campaign against corruption?
Well, let's hear the views that are coming in from the listeners who sent in their comments via the WhatsApp line 0703-090-090. Andrew in Mbale writes in and said, the only obvious crime scene in this country is the Parliament of Uganda. Where is the IGG and State House Anti-Corruption Unit? They are taking too long to arrive at the crime scene. We have another comment. Good evening, Spectrum. Thanks for the show. Please kindly dismiss those two gentlemen from studio, because what I see, this is a case where people are trying to politicize every issue, especially when it comes to do with NRM. Remember, we cannot move on by social media smear, saying it's all about power and envy, jealousy, bad heart. We should also have some respect to our leaders. That's a comment from Anthony. Then we have another comment coming in from Apollo. He says, Kenneth seems jittery and uncomfortable when the guests speak strongly about the rot in Parliament. We know that media personalities are targeted with lots of bribery money from Parliament to change the narrative. I hope our Kenneth is not bought already. Apollo, I can assure you, I do not have a single penny in my pocket from Parliament. And Apollo continues with another comment where he says, at what point will Ugandans get angry against the plunder and take action? Where shall our salvation come from? Leaders from the opposition who are supposed to be our hope are also accomplices in these crimes. Even leaders from civil society who are supposed to be vanguards of accountability, hold government accountable, are also eating from Museveni's hand. Godba knows that very well. I don't know, Godba, how much money you've picked from that hand. When Betty Kamya wanted to innovatively do a lifestyle audit on ownership of buildings in Wakiso, Kampala, she burnt her fingers and abandoned the project. Why? Was the response any different from that of way back in the 90s when Ugandans were told that for as long as money leaves the Bank of Uganda and crosses the road to Greenland, that looked fine? Do we have institutions to check the excesses? That's the comment from Fred. Pasi Mulumba writes in and says, now that they have the Homo card, all hastes are being covered up in the name of being witch-hunted because they supported the anti-gay bill. We are now about to tell off traffic cops that we are being penalized by the cops because we are anti-LGBT. That's a comment from Pasi Mulumba there. Well, gentlemen, those are some of the comments that are coming in. Let's wrap up this discussion. Somebody is asking, at what point should Ugandans actually get angry, and is saying, where will our salvation come from? So, where will our salvation come from, Mr. Senduga?
Yeah. First of all, on the one hand, given the spread of this problem, sometimes I ask myself that maybe even if President Museveni wanted to act, maybe it is very difficult because it appears everyone in his cabinet or very close is actually soiled, and therefore it would be difficult to expect salvation to come from there. So salvation, in my view, will have to come from the people. The Constitution says that power belongs to the people.
But do these people really understand the power and the fact that the resources that are being used by the so-called government actually belong to them?
I think what has been happening on a daily basis should make us and every citizen aware and understand that it is us, the ordinary people, who are affected that have to take charge. And in fact, the Inspector General of Government, Honorable Betty Kamya, told us that none of the officials is a victim of corruption. It is us who will die without medicine. That for them, any of them, that it's a call away to the president and they will be thrown out and have first-class treatment. Therefore, for me,
I think what Betty Kamya was trying to do was to send a message to Ugandans to be proactive in terms of fighting corruption.
Is that her job?
Yes,
she has been mobilizing the public to actually be the vanguard, to take the lead in exposing the corrupt.
Let every citizen take that message and understand that it is our money and it is us who are supposed to protect it. If it means, to make sure that none of these people go to our offices, so be it. But there has to be a stop. And unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be an incentive for the president to act on corruption. There seems to be no disincentive also for him not to act on it. So we are in between there. And yet, all of us are waiting for him, to help us. But it appears, we saw him the other day on social media with the speaker. Each time there's a problem and someone is adversely mentioned, we see him sitting with them. So what they tell him, we don't know. And you are talking about access to information. He doesn't come out to tell us the perspective he has received and therefore the basis of his actions or lack of action on these problems. So the point I'm making is that let the citizens, whom Beth Kamia said, it is us who should care, not the leaders. Come out and say, no is no, and action is now, and begin to demand answers. And if we do that, I think, the president is someone who, on some issues, is quite sensitive, that quickly he will read the mood of the public and act on them. And good enough also, when he acts on something, we see, things beginning to move.
All right. We have a comment. Uganda is a dead society. It needs rebuilding, total collapse. That's Edison there. How come the mandated institutions are very fast to grab local government personnel over small monies and leave the big fish? It seems safer to steal big. That's Albert. Corruption has eaten every fiber of our society. Only God will do away with it globally. That is Moses Patrick there with that comment. Very quickly, Godba, your closing remarks as we come to the end of this show.
Yeah, so I think that where we are now as a country, they are right now we probably have only two options. Both of them are not the easy ones. As I said, we still have a president. President Museveni has a history, his history of resistance. I still believe that he has a goodwill of Ugandans. If he decided to crack the whip, I think he can be able to put all these characters in order. I think those people who talk to him, my view is that they would really be talking to him to encourage him and say, man, this thing is leaving a very, very bad trail around you. But in the absence of that, we need what I usually call collective citizen resistance. All Ugandans in their different formations, political, business, civil society, religious, professional bodies, we all need to come together and mount the kind of resistance to the current of hemorrhage and the pillage and plunder that this NRM cabal is perpetuating in this country.
All right, with that, we come to the end of Spectrum. Let me thank you, my dear guest, Mr. Gilbert Senduga, Executive Director at the Africa Freedom of Information Center, Mr. Godbert Mushabe, Associate Director at the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, and you, the listeners, for contributing generously to this show. Well, I've been your host, Kenneth Lukwago Anderson. Up next, we have the news in English with Ms. Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BB Jr.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.